Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 724. 724, March the 17th, 2019, Sunday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Alrighty, we're still getting caught up from yesterday. We have a lot more news to cover, so we're going to jump right into it, and I'll have to go fast, but again, just try to listen fast, because there's a lot to cover here. So, let's get with it. Alrighty, how bad is it? How bad is it? Well, it's so bad that Chelsea Clinton was cornered by a group of SJWs and taken to task for comments Chelsea made about Ilhan Omar's anti-Semitic comments. And it was captured on video. One SJW accused Chelsea of being responsible for the Christchurch attack in New Zealand. Chelsea could only reply by saying how sorry she was. She totally caved. So, I'm sure many of you have seen that video. I would never have let that SJW go off on me like that. I would have called her out. I would have gotten her face and straightened her out. That's what I would have done. But not Chelsea. No. Chelsea Hubble Clinton, stood right there and just, I'm so sorry you feel that way. You see, it's coming back. It's the boomerang effect. They created this, and now it's coming back to bite them in the ass. That's why this is such a freak show. It's a circus, and it's only going to get worse, or better, depending on which side of the aisle you're on. If you're a Democrat, you got to be, you got a lot of problems, but for those of us on the other side, it's going to be a lot of laughs, a lot of entertainment, and some big wins. Big wins in the future. There you go, Chelsea Hubble. My oh my. How bad is it? Well, it's so bad that Chrissy Steele, who has been touted as this top-notch professional intelligence analyst, the former head of MI6 in Moscow, was reduced to being a complete idiot when Mr. Gubarev's attorneys informed him that the story he used as evidence to accuse Mr. Gubarev of being the one that hacked the DNC was a now defunct website where random people could post stories that are not fact-checked, edited, or filtered in any way. Steele described the research as open source investigating. In other words, Google searches. These people are complete idiots. You know what happened here? Glenn Simpson, the author of the dossier, is sitting back writing the dossier, and he sits back and says to himself, man, you know, I can write the damn dossier. I can write the smear campaign, put it in action. I can pass it out to some people, but man, we've got to find someone who can feed it to the FBI, the CIA, someone with some real credibility that can get it to the media, that can back this. We need to find someone. Hey, how about my buddy Christopher Steele? So he probably picked up the phone and called Christopher Steele and said, hey, buddy, you want to help me out on something? And make a bunch of cash, because listen, I'm working for the Clintons. They got a lot of money. They've stolen millions over the years, hundreds and hundreds of millions. They got all kinds of money, and I got some of it I'll send to you. What I need for you, though, I don't need you to really do anything other than a few Google searches. I just need you to be the face, the credibility behind this smear campaign I'm going to run. And, of course, you got connections through the State Department and the CIA and the FBI, so you can feed it to them and maybe feed it to some media organizations. It's easy money, Chris. Easy money. And no one will ever know about you. Oh, that's right. No one will ever know that you ever had anything to do with it. It'll all be a big secret, and we'll take out Trump, the Orange Hitler. Doesn't that sound great, Chris? You want to sign up? I'll send you a check right now. That's what happened. How bad is it? Well, it's so bad that just 2 days ago, Erin Burnett on the commie news network, CNN, told her audience that most of the dossier has been proven to be true. She told her audience that the dossier was first funded by the Republicans. Wrong. How many times have I been through this? She's supposed to be a professional journalist. But anybody, even with a half of a lick of common sense and a computer and the ability to do a Google search, could figure this one out in 5 minutes. It was Paul Singer, owner of the Washington Free Beacon, or the majority owner of the Washington Free Beacon, that went to Confusion GPS for some opposition research on political candidates, Republicans, during the Republican primary. He was basically a supporter of Bush and Rubio. So he was looking for opposition research on the other individuals, including Trump. Once Trump won the primary, then Mr. Singer was out, at which point that is when the Right Reverend Clinton picked up the research, the opposition research, Confusion GPS, and that's when Steele started putting together the dossier. Long after Mr. Singer and the Washington Free Beacon were already out of it. Now you could find that out in about 2 minutes on a Google search. Even Christopher Steele could have figured this one out. Well, maybe not. He went to CNN, and there he would have found bad information, basically. So these are the idiots that we're dealing with here. These are the idiots. Burnett is also telling our audience that Gubarev's company hacked the DNC, despite all the information that's just come out. It's amazing. You gotta question. I mean, is Erin Burnett actually this stupid, this lazy, this incompetent, or is she just flat lying? Well, we have Crazy Uncle Joe. Crazy Uncle Joe, he met yesterday with Stacey Abrams. Remember her? She still has not conceded that she lost that Georgia governor's race to Brian Kemp. And in fact, she says that she won. That she got the most votes, but she didn't get the job. She's talking about illegal votes. Let's see. President Trump has hit Magoo. And his daughter, Megan Magoo, is not very happy. So Trump tweeted out after watching this, he was watching Fox, I guess, and he saw Ken Starr, who was the former special counsel that investigated a lot of the Clinton crimes back in the 90s, and he was on Fox, in an interview and talking about, what's going on with the dossier and things like that. And so based on that interview, Trump tweeted out the following. Quote, spreading the fake and totally discredited dossier is unfortunately a dark stain against John McCain. Ken Starr, former independent counsel, said he had far worse, that McCain had far worse stains than this, including the thumbs down on repeal and replace after years of campaigning to repeal and replace. Well, Megan Magoo, she better get ready, because there's a lot more coming out about her father, Senator Magoo, and the fact that he was a key player in trying to destroy Trump as a candidate and then take him out in a coup. Senator Magoo is guilty of treason. He's guilty of treason and a lot of other bad things. Yeah, and the double thumbs down to repeal and replace. All that stuff. All that stuff. And it's all going to come out. So Megan Magoo, she might want to get a couple boxes of a couple cases maybe of Kleenex, because tears will be falling as the truth will be coming out. And Daddy-O is going to look pretty bad when we get to the bottom of this. Senator Magoo. Senator Magoo. He's rotting in hell as we speak. Well, the Prime Minister of New Zealand is now saying that a gun ban is coming to New Zealand. First they'll start with semi-autos, and then they'll come for your, I guess, muskets or whatever else you've got, water guns, anything you've got like that. So, yeah, if you're in New Zealand right now, you may want to get your arsenal together, and you might want to get it together in a way that's not traceable, you might say, if you want to be able to protect your life and your property, because the Prime Minister there is getting ready to take your guns away. Maybe you should talk to your friends over there in Australia and ask them how that went for them, because they signed on to this exact same thing. The little creeping play where they first start with a little gun grab and then a bigger gun grab and a bigger gun grab, and pretty soon you're disarmed, like they are in Australia and the UK. Well, it looks like there's been hundreds of loony lefties gathered in front of the Supreme Court to do some planking in honor of Ruth Buzzy Ginsburg. in honor of her 86th birthday, which is coming up, I think, today. Actually, I think it is, or soon. So planking is basically a type of a push-up that people do who cannot actually do a real push-up. And that's what Ginsburg does. So here we have these SJWs in front of the Supreme Court doing plank-style push-ups. They're out there planking in honor of Ruth Buzzy Ginsburg. Oh my God. These people are insane. Well, look who we have here. We haven't heard from this idiot in quite some time. Knew it wouldn't be long before he popped his head up out of the hole. It's that loser Alec Baldwin, who's also an idiot. And how bad is it with this idiot? Well, Baldwin says that Trump was a punishment for our sins. Trump was a punishment for our sins. He brings up the slaughter of Native Americans. I'm sure Trump's responsible for that. Slavery. Yeah, I'm sure Trump's responsible for that as well. Japanese internment camps, Vietnam, and of course the typical terms misogynist and racist are included in there as well. Well, the thing about this is, Alec, you moron, is that first of all, the slaughter of Native Americans. You know, that's a very complicated issue, and because my mom's side of the family are Crow-Indian, and I know a little bit about this, and I've read a lot of history about what it was like here in the New World when people were coming here in the 1500s, 1600s, early 1700s. The Native American population wasn't exactly a great group of folks in a lot of cases. Some of them were. Some of them were quite friendly with the Europeans who were come over. They got along quite well. But there was also other groups of Native Americans who were crazy, bloodthirsty killers, and killed for no reason. Innocent Europeans who just happened to come over and try to make a new life here. They burned down their houses, stole their livestock, scalped them, murdered their children, cut babies out of the woman's womb. They did horrible, horrible shit. Maybe Alec is unaware of something called the French and Indian War, where the French and a group of Indians went to war against the British and a group of Indians. The Indians fighting the Indians. And in case you're not aware, Alec, there were many, many Indian tribes that fought with many other Indian tribes. There was good Indians and bad Indians, depending on how you want to look at it. And that's just basically the history of that. As far as and there's more. I could go deep into this topic here about the Native Americans. And there's something else. If you're such an environmentalist, Alec, maybe you should look into the environmental habits of some of these Indian tribes. Many of them were nomadic. What does that mean, Alec? Well, it means that they basically would take up on a plot of land and they would basically fish and hunt and use everything in the environment there in that local area until it was all used up. And then they would move to another area and do it again. And then to another area and do it again. They weren't conservationists. They weren't friendly to the environment. They were anti-environmentalists. They were hard on the environment, Alec. Maybe you should look into that. And as far as the slaughter of the Native Americans, now actually the person who's usually known for that in history as far as the presidents are concerned is Andrew Jackson and the Trail of Tears and all that sort of thing. And of course, Trump's one of his favorite presidents is Andrew Jackson. But not because Andrew Jackson murdered a lot of Indians. A lot of Indians murdered a lot of Andrew Jackson's friends and soldiers that served with him, by the way. It's a complicated issue, Alec, but the fact of the matter is, it was a Democrat, Andrew Jackson. Let's look at the slavery issue, Alec. Well, I believe that was the Democrats, Alec. I believe it was the Republicans, specifically one named Abraham Lincoln, that freed the slaves. It was Democrats who fought against it. It was the Democrats who were for all the Jim Crow. It was the Democrats who gave us the KKK. That's right, Alec. Democrats, like you. How about Vietnam? Well, I believe it was Lyndon Johnson who put those ground troops into Vietnam and then escalated the war, a Democrat. And he also participated in the assassination of the previous president, John Kennedy, who was going to get us out of Vietnam. That's right. That's right, Alec. You may want to do a little research on that. And as far as misogynistic and racist, that would be you, Alec. And you've played a lot of interesting characters over the years. Do you think some of those characters you played in the movies motivated some of the crazy people doing some of the crazy shit they're doing, Alec? Maybe it's time for a little look in the mirror, Alec. Maybe a little soul searching. Or maybe you could just jump off a building and kill yourself. And you're a perfect example of a great father, are you not? Do we remember that phone call? The way you talked to your daughter? And that's just the one time we caught it. You're a nasty, nasty man, Alec. And I don't like you very much. You need to take that leap. Take the leap, Alec. Do us all a favor. Take the leap. Take the leap. Well, it appears that the SJWs are not just here in this country, of course. They're everywhere, including England. That's right. They must have the same people running their educational system that we have. Probably the same folks. Because these SJWs in England were having a march to save the planet. They want to save the planet. So what is their solution to saving the planet? Well, they had a march. And they marched together chanting 1, 2, 3, 4. Theresa May is a effing whore. 1, 2, 3, 4. Theresa May is an effing whore. Yes, I'm sure that will bring about the perfect climate situation for us all and save us all from certain death. Thank you for your contribution to the planet, you freaking morons. How dumb is she? Well, how dumb is he? Although he could be a she these days. I don't know if he's a she or she's a he or it's a what or what's a who. I don't know what the is going on. But we do know John Cusack. Now this is funny because my girlfriend's favorite guy in the world is John Cusack. And I give her a lot of crap about it as well. And I actually like some of his movies. But she loves John Cusack. And so I give her a rough time about it. But Cusack says that the New Zealand attack was inspired by Trump and Candace Owens. That this guy's totally got. Now, I don't talk about a lot of these Cusack tweets and stuff that I hear. There's a cat fight going on right outside my door. In case if you're hearing this going on right here, this is the two cats fighting, which they do all the time. So just try to ignore the cat fight going on outside my door. Sometimes they get a little crazy. But that's what's going on. So, anyway, Cusack, again, because my girlfriend watches all his movies and talks about him and follows him on Facebook and all this type of stuff, I have to suffer through a lot of his tweets, and I don't talk about it a lot on TowerGate videos, but I have to read all this guy's tweets. Unfortunately, my girlfriend shares them with me, which I'm not interested in, which I usually laugh at him and tell her he's an asshole. And, so anyway, I was just thinking about John Cusack and this comment that he's making about comments maybe Trump has made. He somehow tries to tie that, or comments that Candace Owens has made, to try to tie that to some action some crazy person in New Zealand takes. Okay? So I did some reflecting back on the movie career of John Cusack and using the same analogy that he uses, using the same sort of rationale that he uses, I've concluded the following. I have concluded that the 9/11 hijackers were likely did what they did after they watched Con Air. I've determined that possibly serial killers were motivated after watching Frozen Ground. It's possible, based on John Cusack, that the criminal con men are motivated to steal and commit larceny after watching The Grifters. It's very likely that Terry McAuliffe's criminal legacy was motivated by watching The Bagman. Maybe there have been many murderers who were motivated by watching The Paperboy or The Ice Harvest. It's possible that Kim Jong-un in Iran are motivated to build nukes by watching Fat Man and Little Boy. Maybe bank robbers are motivated by watching Money for Nothing. All these things are possible based on John Cusack's twisted thought process. So shove a sock in it, John, and kiss my ass. Next, we have Jeb Bush. He thinks a Republican should challenge Trump in 2020. Oh boy, this guy's so stupid. Jeb is so dumb, he doesn't even realize at this point. It's been, 3 years? He still hasn't figured it out. Trump saved the Republican Party. I got a good idea, Jeb. Why don't you jump in and challenge Trump in 2020? Oh, that's right, you already did, and he kicked your ass. Now shut up and crawl back in your hole. And we still want to know what was it that you saw at the funeral that rattled you so bad, Jeb? Maybe you can tell us that. If you can't, then just shut the hell up and go away. That's all we care about. Uh-oh, looks like week 18. Week 18 in France. And what's happening there today? Well, yesterday, in week 18, Paris is burning. That's right. Paris is burning. Fortunately, Dokken, rhymes with rockin', saw this coming years ago. Somebody call Don Dokken and give him a thumbs up. Give Don Dokken a thumbs up on his Facebook page or his Twitter, because Don Dokken called it. And by the way, George Lynch, one of my favorite 80s guitarists. He rocks. Great tone. Let's see. So yeah, Paris is burning. It's week 18 in France. This just goes on and on and on. And ultimately, Macron is going to have to capitulate. I mean, I think he's up for election right in the fall, like October or something. This guy's done. He's toast. He is toast, man. What a disaster. Him and Trudeau, they were supposed to save the world from populism. I don't think it's going to work out. How bad is it? Well, it's so bad that over at MSNBC, they did a segment called The Crisis of Whiteness that is generating unimaginable carnage. The crisis of whiteness. No, what we have is a crisis of stupidity. It's a crisis of stupidity. And you folks over on MSNBC and CNN and Wall Street Journal and all the rest, you're the ones propagating it. If we took your asses off the air, this country would be straightened out in 10 years. Well, that didn't stop Dana Bash over at CNN for blaming Trump and Breitbart for the New Zealand massacre. Trump and Breitbart for the New Zealand massacre. This is insanity. Absolute insanity. But we shouldn't, with all this crazy news going on, we shouldn't lose something really important that was brought up by John Solomon. I think it was in an article on The Hill. I think it was Thursday or Friday. I know Bongino talked about it. Heard a little clip of that, and I don't think I covered it, or maybe it's one of these deals I just didn't get to it. I'm sure I wrote it down but never got to it. But he goes through this process of what happened in these contacts between the fat man, Stefan Halper, who was John Brennan's bitch boy, who was running the frame-up operations over in the UK and here in the States, on Papadopoulos and Carter Page, and Michael Flynn as well. And they attempted to get Josh Miller, but he didn't bite. So as John Solomon is reporting in his story, he goes through these events that took place with Stefan Halper and Papadopoulos and Stefan Halper and Carter Page. And he mentions in there that in both of those instances, both Papadopoulos and Carter Page made it perfectly clear to the fat man, Stefan Halper, that they didn't know anything about any Russia-hacked emails or Hillary emails or Russian collusion or any of this type of stuff. Both of them made it perfectly clear to Halper that they had no idea about what any of this stuff was, didn't have any interest in it, didn't know anything about it, didn't care anything about it. It was just, to them, it was completely stupid. This because Halper was actually working, being paid by, well, it's hard to know who was paid. We went through this many, many months ago. It's kind of a twisted trail because of the way the CIA buries people and these various agencies within the government to hide them. And but if you follow the trail, ultimately it was the CIA money, probably designated to the CIA, that was actually paying Halper. He was essentially working for the CIA, for Brennan. And so if he was being paid by them, and he was the confidential informant, and he spoke with Papadopoulos and Carter Page, and they both gave him information that was to say, hey, we don't know anything about this. I don't know anything about any emails. I don't know about Russia, hacking emails, WikiLeaks. This is all crazy stuff. We don't know what you're talking about. Now, that should have been recorded by Halper, and it should have been, and I'm sure it was, related back to his handler back in Washington, whoever was at CIA or whoever he was answering to. And that should have been in the FISA application, but it was not. It was exculpatory information. So there was exculpatory information given directly to the informant by the two people he was trying to set up. And they both told him information that would have been exculpatory. That was not included in the FISA application. That's just another of the many problems with the FISA application. They didn't tell the FISA court it was paid for by the right Reverend Clinton. They didn't tell that none of this stuff was verified. They didn't tell any of them got fact checked. They didn't tell where the sources were, who the sources were, anything else. They based it totally on Christopher Steele and his credibility. Everything was based on the credibility of Christopher Steele and their incompetence. But they didn't follow any procedures. They lied to the FISA court. They misrepresented the facts. A lot of other things. And again, lots of exculpatory evidence that was never included, which should have been. They've got a lot of problems, my friends. A lot of problems. As this thing gets aired out, and it's in the process of happening right now, I think we've turned the corner pretty much at this point. I think the dossier, as I said yesterday, is dead. Dead. Now, it'll take the media a while to catch up on it, because they're totally bought into it. Hook, line, and sinker. They've sold their audience on it now for the past 2.5 years. And so they have no choice. They're going to ride this sucker until it goes off the cliff. They have no choice. They're all in. But it's all coming out. It's all coming out. And when it's finally clear exactly what did happen, not only are 2 to 3 dozen very high-level people going to jail, a lot of people are going to be getting fines, not to mention all the other people who will face some consequences because they knew about what was going on but did nothing or said nothing. They weren't participants in the actual plot, but they were aware of the plot and did nothing and helped cover it up. Didn't come forward once they knew what happened. They should have come forward and disclosed what they know. They did not. That makes them culpable in the crime. But I want to get to something here that... two things specifically that I'm really focused on right now as we're watching the dossier. It's been destroyed. We're watching all these sources. We're watching what was done. It's all coming out. The entire thing is collapsing like a house of cards. And we have Lindsey Graham, of course, talking about he's now pursuing this investigation. He's looking at the FISA. He's looking at the dossier. But something about this, whenever you listen to Lindsey Graham, and he's on TV a lot, and he gives speeches a lot, and he always talks about what happened at the FBI and the DOJ. The FBI and the DOJ. What did the FBI and the DOJ do? Well, the thing here is that there's two other things going on here that Lindsey Graham is not quite dialed in on. And I don't know if it's because he's being coy and just playing it this way, or because he's not totally clued in as to exactly the full gravity of what's actually did happen. And what I mean by that is that if Lindsey Graham does continue digging into the DOJ and the FBI, what he's going to find out is that there's another player, there's other players in here that were hugely important that Lindsey Graham does not ever talk about. And maybe he's doing this on purpose, maybe he's just not quite there yet. But ultimately, if Lindsey Graham does pursue this, and he does get to the bottom of it, he is going to stumble onto the intelligence community. The CIA, British intelligence, and other intelligence agencies, obviously maybe Australian intelligence, New Zealand intelligence, any of these Five Eyes countries was who he was really working with. John Brennan, Mr. Potato Head himself went on CNN and took credit for, hey, it was my intelligence, our intelligence at the CIA, that we gave the FBI to get them to do the investigation, because we don't do investigations. The FBI does investigations. So we're the ones responsible for really getting Operation Crossfire and the investigations going. We're the ones that did that, CIA. So there you have it, Lindsey. You've got, if you want to get to the bottom of this, you got to go dig deeper than FBI and DOJ. They came in after the fact. This stuff it began back in 2014, really. And then as soon as Trump came down the escalator, the CIA and MI6 and all these other assets in the dark underworld of intelligence, the covert world, they were all already in gear, already working on it, doing the frame-ups, doing all these things. So I'm telling Lindsey Graham that if you really dig into this thing, at some point you are going to discover what I discovered over a year ago. And that is, you are going to find the multi-agency or six-agency task force. This was the group of agencies that Brennan put together to put together the information, the false information, the hoax information that was going to be fed to the FBI to get the investigation going. And you will find, when you look into that, Lindsey, that there are players in the FBI, the State Department, the Treasury Department, Defense Intelligence Agency, and several others, Secret Service, who all were part of the multi-agency or six-agency task force. This is where a lot of that began. They created the phony, garbage, so-called evidence, and they pumped it in to the FBI. So the FBI is not where it begins. It begins much earlier than that in late 2014, and it starts with Mr. Potato Head. British intelligence is where it began with the six-agency or multi-agency task force. Peter Spenstrokernus was on that task force. Clapper was involved in the task force. McCabe was involved in the task force. This task force brought these agencies together. The DOJ NSD, the FBI, counterintelligence, CIA, Treasury, DOD. So you had these agencies brought in, players from each of them, and that was the beginning of creating the false evidence, the hoax evidence that we fed to the FBI and sold as legitimate intelligence. But the FBI should have investigated it and blown it out of the water. But they really didn't need to, because Clapper, Brennan, and Peter Spenstrokernus were all involved in the multi-agency task force. They knew that they were manufacturing phony evidence because they were part of that original group. Then they went back to their positions at FBI and DNI, and they used the very crap that they put together to help usher it through the process, to get it eventually to where they could get a FISA warrant, launch investigations, and run the frame-up to try to prevent Trump from winning the election after exonerating Hillary. So these people have a lot of problems, and this is all coming out. And this is what Lindsey Graham, if he continues to dig, he is going to find himself in the underworld. He's going to find himself in the dark world of covert operations and the intelligence community. That's where he's going to find himself. How long it will take him to get there, I don't know. Will he ever get there? I don't know. We'll see. But to Lindsey Graham, I would say, if you want to get to the root of all this, you need to go much deeper than the FBI and the DOJ, Lindsey. Another thing that we need to know, and that no one's really focusing too much on right now, and I think that we are going to get there, is exactly what was Hillary's position in all of this. As you know, most of you know who watch my videos, I believe the rotten Reverend Clinton was the puppet master of all this. I believe she was the marionette. I believe she was the one pulling a lot of the strings and making a lot of these things happen. And so what we need to know, again, about the two highest level people here that we're talking about is the rotten Reverend Clinton and Barack Hussein Obama. We need to know what both of them knew and when they knew it, and what they did about what they knew when they knew it. What we need to know is exactly how much direct involvement did the rotten Reverend Clinton have. You could look at it and say, okay, well, she just said, okay, here's $13 million. Perkins Coie put together a smear campaign to help me and to take out Trump, and then just walked away from it. Or was she actually directly running the operation, guiding the operation, controlling the operation, and motivating people to do the things they did, to bring in the various players, and to put all that in motion? How much direct involvement did the rotten Reverend Clinton have in all of this? Did she instruct Christopher Steele or Fusion GPS to get the dossier into the FBI, into the State Department? What was it that motivated Steele? Who was paying him? The rotten Reverend Clinton was essentially paying him through a third party. And it's something that I've said before, that when we get to the bottom of this, in addition to discovering the multi-agency task force and John Brennan being the source of the early source of everything happening, we're going to learn that the Right Reverend Clinton was a lot more directly involved in perpetrating this hoax than what's being reported right now. Ultimately, the Right Reverend Clinton and Barack Hussein Obama are going to be the two principals that are eventually going to be outed as being the two key players behind all of this entire hoax. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you. Bye.